Hi, and welcome to episode 7 of the Linux Shelter. First up, the Mayor of New York is proposing open source tax credits. Open source developers would be able to claim back up to 20% of their out-of-pocket expenses with a ceiling of $200 per year. I think this would make a massive impact on open source developers. I mean, I know it's only $200 a year per person, but if you're working on an open source project, that's kind of huge. If you've got a whole team of people working on this stuff, that's really massive. I mean, I work on an open source project myself, and I can claim back literally nothing from the UK government on what I do, which sucks. And you put software out there for free, you do things for people, and people like it and use it and enjoy it, and the government are like, yeah, okay, that's great, and we're probably going to use it, but we're not actually going to let you claim any money back, which is bullshit. Back to the actual story though. It's not certain that the law will pass because it's been being discussed since 2008. So that's like 8 years that this has been being discussed and nothing has actually come out of it yet, which really sucks. Yeah, I think we need that in New York. I think we need that everywhere. I think we definitely need that in the UK. That would be awesome for open source developers like me, possibly for people who are watching this who also work on open source projects. I'm sure they would love to be able to get £200 back on a project that they're working on. I'm sure that would be great for them, but I guess that's not going to be a thing anytime soon with the whole austerity bullshit, and this is not the politics shelters, so I'm not going to start going on a political rant. What I will do is go on to the next story, which is Steam's misleading report on Linux gamers. In 2013, Steam said that 0.98% of their customers were using Linux. They released a report recently that said in 2015 the number of Linux gamers is 0.91%, which on the face of it looks like it's 0.7 down. Maths is not my strong suit. But yeah, it's down. It was 0.98, it's now 0.91. There's a big problem with this, in that in 2013 they had 65 million Steam had 65 million users. In 2015 Steam had 125 million users, which is more than double. I think roughly double, around double, or something like that. So that means that Steam actually has 1.2 million Linux gamers. People are saying the number of Linux gamers is falling because of this report. It pisses me off when shit like this happens, because you have journalists who grab this, some journalists who have no idea what Linux is. They know nothing about Linux, but they see this report and see people going crazy about it. And I'm not looking at anyone in particular, BBC, who do really bad tech journalism, and they will see this and go, well, this just proves that the number of gamers on Linux is falling, when it's not. There's 1.2 million gamers using Linux at some level that are also using Steam, which is huge. I mean, that's a massive market. You think if you're charging like $10 for an indie game on Steam, and you can get half of that, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of $10. That's like $5 million. Yes, see? I can do maths. Yeah, it really doesn't help anybody when people report that the number of Linux gamers are going down when actually they're not. So, because, let me try and get my thoughts clear here. So you're not helping the community. And people may argue, well, why does anyone need to help the Linux community? The Linux community should stand up on its own. But you're depriving game developers of a whole source of revenue, a whole market that is using Steam and wants to use Steam and likes using Steam. I use Steam, I do like Steam. I play a ridiculous amount of Kerbal Space Program entirely on Steam and almost exclusively on Linux because it runs so much faster on Linux than it does on Windows. Yeah, and Steam aren't helping anybody either. The Steam are not helping the Linux community with this because they're not including SteamOS as a Linux distro on these statistics. They're not including SteamOS in these statistics at all. SteamOS is a Linux distro. SteamOS is Linux. If you click on Linux titles, if you filter Linux titles on Steam, it says SteamOS and Linux, or SteamOS/Linux. Why would Valve not even include their own OS in this list? It's astounding to me. Why, when you're making a Linux distribution and you're doing a report on your own users and you are a games platform, why you would not list your own projects in the statistics? I mean, we know that not a massive amount of people are using SteamOS. We know the uptake for the Steam machines is not fantastic either, because why would it be? Why would you buy another machine to stick in your lounge if you've either A, got a gaming machine, or B, own a laptop that can play games, and you want Steam as basically a management software for your games library? That's what I use Steam for. It's not because I like using SteamOS. I've never used SteamOS. I use Steam on Ubuntu. Meh. It pissed me off when I saw that. It just really annoyed me. So I thought I would cover it because it's Linux. And I know a lot of people use Steam on Linux. I know a lot of people don't use Steam on Linux because of DRM and stuff, and that's fair enough. But I just wanted to have a rant about that. I really wanted to rant about... It annoys me when people have a project and then don't pimp their own project. Especially when you're reporting on your own company. It's weird. Okay, rant over for the time being. Next up, Amazon are publishing a DIY guide for building a Amazon Echo using the Raspberry Pi and GitHub. This looks really cool. I've seen the Amazon Echo. I think, actually, if you wanted an Amazon Echo, this is probably the best way to go, because the Amazon Echo is a little creepy, the pre-built one. If you don't know, the Amazon Echo is kind of like a Siri/Google Now/Cortana in a device. And it uses your Wi-Fi, and you ask it things. It can buy you stuff off Amazon. It can give you the weather. It's like a personal assistant, but instead of it being on your phone, it's on something that looks like a wireless Bluetooth speaker, which is kind of cool. And basically Amazon have printed a DIY guide on how to make one of these using a Raspberry Pi, and they put the instructions on GitHub, which I think is really cool. Yeah, Amazon using open source. I know Amazon use a lot of open source software, but Amazon using open source software and promoting open source hardware to build a knockoff of one of their own products, I think that's really cool. I think that's awesome. And I am probably going to have a go at building one. I will have to see if I can make it. I don't know if I can make one. I've had a very quick look at the instructions, and they don't look terribly complicated. There's a lot of code involved, and if you're new to Linux, it's probably, and you haven't coded, if you're new to Linux and you've done a lot of programming on Windows or Apple, that's fine. If you're a total newbie, this is probably not the project you are looking for. But yeah, I will have a go and see if I can make something happen. If it works, I will show it on the show next week. Okay, next up. The Vocore 1-inch tall Linux computer is available for pre-order right now. It costs $39. It has a USB port. I didn't get any specifications on how fast it is, but I'm guessing not that fast because it has a whole 32 megabytes, yes, megabytes, not gigabytes, 32 megabytes of RAM and a whopping 8 megabytes of storage. Wow. It's tiny. It's designed for routers or a file server for your home, or a print server, maybe a mail server for your home. It's not going to be something that you build a gaming rig out of. People are saying that you could use it in electronics projects, but it runs Linux, which made me think when I was writing this. If it's got 32 meg of RAM, that's not a lot. However, that is probably enough for you to run TinyCore in RAM mode, including the desktop on the is it TinyCore Plus? It comes with a tiny desktop. It's like 15 meg, I think, 15-20 meg. It's certainly less than 32. Could you run TinyCore desktop on a 1-inch computer and then maybe power that computer via USB? That would be insanely cool. I mean, it probably wouldn't be very fast, but it would be insanely cool to run a proper full Linux distro on a computer the size of a dice, and that would be insane. That'd be really, really cool as well. Maybe if you could even make an Amazon Echo out of it. Now there's an idea. Okay, next up. The Ubuntu tablet is available for pre-order. It's called the Aquarius, the BQ Aquarius M10. It can double as a desktop. It costs $289, and I really don't care about it. And I'm going to have a small rant about why I don't care about it. It's a convergence device, and Canonical love convergence. They have been banging on about convergence for so long, like pretty much since I've been a member of the Linux community, which is getting on for 10 years now. And I really don't care about convergence, because if I want to use my tablet for a desktop, that's not going to be a thing, because I'm going to use my tablet for a tablet. I'm going to use it for reading ebooks and browsing the internet when I'm in bed. Maybe taking it on a holiday when I'm really not going to need a full-size computer. I'm not going to need a laptop by the pool when I'm on holiday. I might want a tablet to check Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, but I'm not going to need a full-size computer on holiday. I'm not. Why would I want to plug that into a monitor and keyboard and make that into a desktop or a laptop? It just seems bizarre. I mean, even Apple were referencing the tablet. Somebody was mentioning, I think on the coverage I was watching, because I watched Twit's coverage of the Apple presentation, which I will get to later in the show. And they were saying that tablet sales are going through the floor at the moment. That's because people keep pushing them as convergence devices, and I really don't think. And you've got the Surface, which is now being pushed as a convergence device. Have you tried writing on a tiny keyboard? It sucks. Your hands cramp. It's awful. It is a terrible computing experience. I don't understand why people would want to put themselves through that. We have laptops. Laptops are good. Laptops do the job of a portable computer because they're not desktops. Desktops do the job of a big computer that's powerful and can play kick-ass games and really are the big powerful machine that you need for big powerful stuff. You're not going to use a laptop for that. I really doubt CERN use convergence devices for particle physics. They use desktops because that's what you need. They don't use laptops because you wouldn't want to do particle physics on a mobile processor. So why do people think that you would use a laptop for a tablet for a laptop? It's like I see people going, oh, you can take this mobile phone and you can make it into a laptop. I don't want my phone to be my laptop. I want my phone to be my phone. I want my laptop to be my laptop, and I want my tablet to be my tablet. I'm sorry, conversions bugs me. I think it is the biggest load of bullshit ever invented in computing, and I think it's pretty much just a ploy for a lot of companies to make a lot of money by selling you a device which they can sell you more apps for, because we all know that's where they're making the money. You know, they pretty much take a hit on the hardware because they know you're going to buy apps from their app store because they've locked you into that economy. No, hate convergence. So, okay, moving slightly away from Linux, but I had to include this because it was hilarious and it features Google. Some developers used Google Maps to find a house they were supposed to demolish. They got there and they destroyed the house and ripped it to pieces. The problem was it was the wrong house. Google sent them to the wrong house, and now they are blaming Google for the error. And apparently they're saying it's not their fault and they're not liable. It's Google's fault. Google are liable because reasons. This is so dumb. You cannot blame a software company if you use the software and the software doesn't work. I know people are going to hate that argument, but if you're a professional, like a demolition company, and you're trashing somebody's house, you kind of want to check with something that isn't software that that's the house you're actually supposed to break. It's a good idea to check that it's the house that you're supposed to break, not another house of somebody that had actually applied for permission to repair the house because it was a listed house or something. That's actually another true fact of the story. The owner of the house that got wrecked had applied for permission to repair the house. I hate, this is another bugbear of mine. People going, oh, well, it's not my fault, it's software. No, it's still your fault because you used the software wrong. It always says check with actual things that are real, not just our app. It says that on the mobile version. I doubt they brought a laptop. They probably bought a tablet. Maybe they plugged it into a screen and keyboard and then used it as a desktop to plan the demolition. Who knows? Okay, moving back to computer-related things, kind of. Microsoft hired dancers wearing schoolgirl outfits to dance at a networking event. Wow. How did they ever think this was right? Female attendees said that they felt uncomfortable. Microsoft have come out and apologised and said it wasn't acceptable to use dancing schoolgirls at a networking event. The only problem is that Brianna Wu, a games developer, has said it's not the first time she's seen this kind of thing. She's seen it before at other Microsoft events. Wow. This is like an all-new low for Microsoft. I mean, and we've got a lot of Microsoft stuff this week. Ching. Yeah. So they think that it's okay to have a networking event for games developers and have that at that networking event schoolgirls dancing, because yay equality, yay Gamergate. And I'm not opening that can of worms again, just to say. But yeah, it's incredibly stupid. It's incredibly naive of Microsoft to go, well, this will make the guys happy. I mean, the girls, they're probably not going to love it, but hey, how many of them are actually going to turn up? Ugh. It's awful. 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 But then they redeemed themselves because they made a Twitter bot and they put it online, and it was nice to everybody. until it started listening to Twitter users, and then it was saying that feminism is a cancer and got shut down by Microsoft. Haha. This is what happens when you decide that Twitter is the place to teach your AI social niceties. Anyone that has been on Twitter will tell you that Twitter is not a nice place to hang out. You wouldn't even go on Twitter for constructive criticism about your project, because you'll get half of the replies being haha you're gay, and the other half, or the other third maybe, being you are a noob, and then like 1/3 will actually be constructive criticism, but 2/3 will be bullshit. And Microsoft looked at Twitter and went, that's where we should get an AI to learn stuff. That will be a good place. That will be an excellent school for social niceties. Oh, well. But hey, moving on, they have open sourced Visual Studio Power Productivity tools. You may not be surprised to hear this, but Visual Studio Power Productivity tools are a collection of productivity tools. Except that Microsoft didn't open source all the extensions, they only open sourced most of them. Yay! Another week, another Microsoft open source project. I wonder whether they're going to open source the schoolgirl uniforms next week from the networking event. Maybe they'll open source their racist, anti-feminist Twitter bot. That could be interesting. Actually, props if Microsoft do open source the code for the Twitter bot, because that could be interesting code to look at, genuinely. And it's not often that I will say something nice about Microsoft, but I like their thinking on the Twitter bot. Maybe just not the execution was particularly great. Moving on. A JavaScript developer unpublished 11 lines of code, nearly broke JavaScript and nearly broke the entire internet. A developer created a project called Kik on Git. Kik, unrelated to the developer, this project, is also a messenger app, apparently. I know people are probably going to hate on me and call me old and a noob for not knowing what Kik is, but I don't know what Kik is, so so the messenger app Kik contacted the developer through their agent with a cease and desist. So he unpublished all his code. And one of the things he published, pretty much everyone on the internet uses. And apparently they didn't get their own copy, they were just using it from Git. Or it wasn't updating or something. I am not that up with Git. I don't use Git to publish my open source project, so I don't know. But yeah, for a little while, apparently all shit went down on the internet because this code wasn't available and wasn't working, and bad things happened. So I hear. I didn't actually notice it, but apparently a lot of stuff started breaking. So the company he works for republished the code in the slot he was using, and then the internet was happy again. Wow. I do want to have a little rant about this as well, because I'm kind of on everybody's side. I mean, you don't publish a project with the same name as something that already exists. I mean, with this podcast, I know that there is a Linux project called Linux Shelter, which is a backup software that backs up to the cloud. But I thought the Linux Shelter and Linux Shelter were different enough. It's kind of hard to confuse a podcast and a cloud backup service. And I've been to Linux Shelter's website and it looks awesome. Actually, I'm going to look into actually using it because it looks that good. So, yay. YayLinuxShelter.com. Not the LinuxShelter.com, which is this. So yeah. But you don't... If someone's using something like Kik, and it's got like huge funding and is massive, then don't use their name, especially if all the kids are using it. I mean, no offense to Linux Shelter, but I somehow doubt all the kids are using it for their backup, because I doubt all the kids are backing up. But I know a lot of kids use Kick, so don't call your project Kick. But then equally, don't have a massive childish tantrum and say, well, that's it, if I can't call my project this, you can't use any of my code, even though the whole internet is using my code. I'm taking my code and going home. That's childish. That is not how proper developers should behave. And yes, I know that's how proper developers pretty much do behave, but some of them are awesome, but some of them are insanely childish as well. But yeah, it's bullshit all round as far as I'm concerned. You know, Kick shouldn't have tried to sue him, which apparently they did, allegedly, maybe. I'm not sure. There was a lot of versions of this story flying around. He shouldn't have called his project Kick, and he definitely shouldn't have gone, well, I'm going to take my code and go home and have a massive sulk about this. You know, if you make an open source project, things are going to happen that maybe you don't like, and maybe your code is going to be used in ways you don't want, and you can't have a tantrum about that, because that's what open source is. I've had this myself, where I was using some code from somebody else and they got all pissy about it, and it's like, no, this is open source. I can take your code and I can use it under the terms that you released it, which I'm doing. If you don't agree with that, sorry, I don't know what to say, but you have to kind of agree with it, because you released it under open source. You released it under an open source license. If you didn't like the way I was going to use it, you maybe shouldn't have released it under an open source license. For me, open source is a case of publish and be damned. Put your code out there, let people use it. If they don't use it the way you want it to be used, you kind of don't have any recourse. You kind of have to just go quietly to yourself in a private forum. Well, they're bastards and I don't like them, but fuck it, I published it under open source. This episode may be quite sweary. I should warn people now, when the episode is coming closer to the end rather than the beginning. Anyway, moving on to Apple news. Apple open sourced CareKit at their product launch. I'm not sure I trust Apple any more than I trust Microsoft. I mean, they're both bastardly companies, but CareKit looks cool. It looks really interesting, but then it's only helpful if doctors actually use it. I'm going to be a little controversial and say I think if this was available on Android, it would be a lot more popular, because more people use Android devices than use Apple devices. There, I said it again, because it's true. But the other thing, and I'm going to rant about this briefly, everyone, the world and their wife, was banging on about how amazing it was that Apple released a new phone, and it's amazing, and they love it, and it's amazing because they're innovators. Yay! You squashed an iPhone... No. You squashed an iPhone 4S into the case of an iPhone 6S. That's not innovation. In that case, I innovated last week's show by making it half as long. And you hear people going, well, the Apple Pencil, it's just a piece of wizardry made real, basically. No, it's a stylus. It's literally it's a $99 stylus. And the Samsung Galaxy Note came with a stylus years ago. But hey, yay innovation, using really old ideas. Didn't the Newton have a stylus? Anyway, moving on to our last story of the day, of the week even, because this is not a daily podcast. Yeah, it may become a thing. I'm not sure. I'm still tweaking with the format. But yes, lastly, Apple Swift has come to Linux. Swift 2.2 runs on Ubuntu, and I think this is a really interesting development. I've not actually used Swift, but I've heard a lot about it. I've heard it's really popular, and I've heard that it's very, very nice to program in. The only problem with this release that they're bringing out to Linux is it doesn't include the Swift core libraries. They'll be coming out in version 3.0. So, like, 8 releases time? That doesn't sound good. But it does include a debugger, so I guess you can check your code. So, I'm not an Apple fan. I'm really, really not an Apple fan. I hate Apple almost as much as I hate Microsoft. I think there is a lot of bullshit spoken about Apple's involvement in open source. I think it's blown massively out of proportion how important they are to open source and how much they love open source. I don't think they love Microsoft at all. Microsoft loves open source, allegedly. But yeah, people say, well, you know, Darwin's BSD based. So what? Or cups. They haven't open sourced cups. They haven't closed sourced cups. No, because cups was released under the GPL, so they can't. They could fork it, and then they could make it proprietary. But I'm pretty sure that if you release something under the GPL, you have to keep it under the GPL. I don't think you can make it open source and then go, haha, we're taking this away, bye, without forking it. Yeah. So, I don't know. It's Swift 2.2, it runs on Ubuntu. I run Ubuntu. I will probably download it. I will probably have a look at it. Who knows? I mean, I've read a lot about Swift. I've heard it's a really, really good language to program in. And of course, if you want to develop for the iPhone, I think you have to use Swift now. I'm not sure. I think you have to use Swift or maybe C or C++. I know that the iTunes store is insanely restrictive what you can and can't publish, but yeah, I will look at it and I will see what it's like and kick the tires and probably report back next week. And that is it for this week. Thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, thank you for watching. And leave comments, leave feedback. You can send us tweets at the Linux Shelter. No, at Linux Shelter. I don't even know my own Twitter name. I'm awesome. Yeah, so look for Linux Shelter on Twitter. You should find us. I'm pretty sure we're at Linux Shelter. Yeah, so leave us comments, leave us feedback, and we will read feedback and comments. Okay, so that's it for this week. Bye.